This video will cover CRS Activity 450 Watershed Master Planning. In this presentation, we'll talk about WMP Class 4 prerequisites, types of plans that qualify for WMP credit, documentation needed for WMP credit, the resources that are available to communities, and provide an overview of each of the 8 sub-elements. The 2021 addendum to the 2017 CRS Coordinators Manual contains some changes pertinent to this activity. SMR credit is no longer required to receive WMP credit. Impact adjustments are only required if your Watershed Master Plan does not apply to the entire community. The CRS Class 4 prerequisites are listed in the CRS Coordinators Manual. The community must receive at least 3,000 points, meet all of the Class 6 prerequisites, have a BSEG score of 4.4 or better, minimize future flood losses, protect natural floodplain functions, and have the required life safety measures in place. That fourth bullet talks about minimizing future flood losses. Under Activity 450 Stormwater Management, WMP1 and WMP2 credit are prerequisites for a Class 4 CRS rating. You must have studied at least half of your community under a creditable Watershed Master Plan to meet this prerequisite. You must have credit for managing all flows up to and including the 100-year event. Multiple levels of analysis are expected, and there is an alternative for sea level rise for coastal communities. So what is a creditable plan? There's a wide variety of names that these can fall under, but basically an individual watershed plan, a stormwater master plan, or community-wide plan may qualify. Whatever it's called, it needs to meet the WMP1 credit criteria. Once it meets that credit criteria, it can receive additional credit under the other sub-elements. Note that courtesy reviews are available, so if you have a plan already done, or you're working on a plan, we can review your scope of work, your draft plan, or final plan, regardless of where you are in the program. Even if you just had a verification cycle, we can review that at any time and let you know if the plan is creditable. So go ahead and contact your CRS specialist if you need a courtesy review. What plans do not qualify? Typically, something called a floodplain study, water quality study, or ordinance alone does not qualify for WMP credit. Any study that does not evaluate the drainage system and the correct storm events will not qualify. Let's discuss the documentation that needs to be submitted. First, you'll need to submit a completed checklist. Answer all of the questions and fill in all the fields, even if it's NA for sub-elements you are not pursuing. Please mark up your plan and any supporting ordinances or regulations that are required for credit. List the document and section number in the checklist and then mark up the PDF. Please only submit the required documentation. If there are questions, please ask your CRS specialist before submitting. Watershed Master Plan Activity Checklist is available at www.crsresources.org under the 400 Series tab. This checklist contains language from the Coordinator's Manual and highlights what documentation is needed to be submitted and attached. Large areas are provided for responses under each sub-element. There are 8 sub-elements: WMP1, multiple storms, future conditions, and recommendations; WMP2, 100-year standard; WMP3 manages volume of runoff; WMP4 manages the 5-day event; WMP5 identifies wetlands; WMP 6 prohibits alteration of existing channels. WMP 7 requires soft bank treatments. And WMP 8 is a dedicated funding source. Remember that WMP 1 credit is critical to receiving credit under any of the other sub-elements. Also, WMP 1 and WMP 2 are prerequisites for a Class 4 or better. Here's an overview of WMP 1. It must include a technical analysis, so you should have some sort of engineering model or engineering study associated with it. They should evaluate multiple storm events, including the 100-year storm, evaluate future conditions, including sea level rise in coastal areas, identify local drainage issues outside of the special flood hazard area, and then propose solutions for any problems that were identified by the analysis. Those solutions might include capital projects, mitigation projects, or higher standards, something to address the issues that were identified in the plan. Now we're going to go over each one of the sub-elements. WMP 1 credit is provided if the community has identified existing and potential future flood issues through an adopted watershed plan and is addressing those problems. The credit criteria for WMP 1 requires that the plan be formally adopted by your City Council or Board. It needs to evaluate runoff from full development, which means future conditions, or sea level rise for those of you who are in coastal areas, and for the 100-year event. The plan must manage at least the 10 and 25-year events. Notice the difference between evaluate and manage. Manage is where we want to see your recommendations to address any shortcomings in your existing system for the 25 and 10-year events. The fifth requirement is to evaluate a plan that's more than 5 years old to show us that it's still current and relevant. And again, you must receive WMP 1 credit for all of the above credit criteria. Here are some of the common pitfalls. The plan should focus on stormwater management, so areas outside of the floodplain, your local drainage system. The plan must consider future conditions such as land use and sea level rise. Must analyze the 100-year event even if your ordinance regulates a smaller storm. We want to at least see that you ran the analysis for the 100-year to see what would happen. You need to have proposed solutions or recommendations to fix any problems that were identified. For coastal communities, you now need to look at sea level rise through your adopted watershed plan. Specifically, we're looking at sea level rise anticipated through NOAA's 2100 intermediate high projection. Sea level rise alternative credit targets barrier islands and communities with significant low-lying coastal areas. You must analyze the impacts of NOAA's 2100 intermediate high sea level projection on your drainage system. Alternatively, you could look at increments of 1 foot as long as you go to or above the 2100 projection. We want to see how sea level rise is impacting your drainage system, not just what the sea level rise looks like on your community. The WMP2 credit is provided for managing the runoff of all storms up to and including the 100-year event to ensure that flood flows downstream of new development do not increase due to the development. When we say manage all storms, we mean the plan must manage the 10-year, 25-year, or 50-year, and the 100-year storm. We need some regulations or some kind of documentation showing that all storms are controlled community-wide. WMP3 credit is provided if the plan provides on-site stormwater management of future peak flows and volumes so that they do not increase over present values. This adds complexity. We are not only managing the flows, but also the volumes. To get credit for WMP3, we need your regulations. You must provide an ordinance or design manual requiring discharge and volume control. The plan itself needs to reference the ordinance or design manual and explain how WMP3 credit criteria are met. WMP4 credit is provided if the plan manages the runoff from all storms up to and including the 5-day event. So this is even more challenging. In this case, we're looking for a plan that addresses all storms, so the 10-year, 25 or 50-year, and 100-year, and the 5-day storm or locally appropriate worst-case runoff event. Regulations for development to manage those storms are not required, but the plan does need to look at the 5-day event. These next 3 credits are very rare. WMP5 credit is provided if the plan identifies existing wetlands or other natural open space areas to be preserved from development, so that natural attenuation, retention, or detention of runoff is provided. WMP6 credit is provided if the plan recommends prohibiting development, alteration, or modification of existing natural channels and the community has adopted a qualifying ordinance. WMP7 credit is provided if the plan recommends a channel improvement project using natural or soft approaches rather than gabions, riprap, concrete, or other hard techniques, and the community has adopted appropriate design standards or ordinances. WMP8 credit is not uncommon. Credit is provided if the community has a funding source dedicated to implementing the plan's recommendations. A dedicated funding source is a tax or fee that sets aside funding for stormwater improvements. So we're looking for a stormwater utility or flood control district fees. A line item in your budget does not qualify, but a dedicated funding source would qualify. As documentation for WMP8, we need a resolution or other documentation of the funding source, and then language in the plan discussing where the funding comes from. A key resource available online is the guidance document entitled CRS Credit for Stormwater Management. While it says stormwater management, it also covers the Watershed Master Plan. The document itself discusses the credit criteria in more detail than the CRS manual. It provides some examples of plans that have received WMP credits, and it describes common problems found in WMP plans that did not receive credit. This is a good starting point if you're just looking at WMP credit for the first time. Download this guidance document by visiting www.crsresources.org and going to the 400 series page. Thank you for watching this video. For more information, please visit the CRS webpage on FEMA's website at www.fema.gov.